You wouldn't notice her at first. She's small, 10. A slip of a girl folded into the edges of the night, all elbows and quiet breath, wrapped in a faded hoodie 2 sizes too big. She doesn't make noise, doesn't take up space. That's how she survives. But if you stayed a while, just long enough for the silence to settle, just long enough for the mop bucket to squeak its tired rhythm across the tile, you might see her step into the open. You might hear the whisper of socked feet gliding across linoleum, a whisper even softer than the buzz of the dryers. And if you were lucky, you'd witness something close to holy. Her name is Isabel Torres, and this strange little laundromat off Blackstone Avenue is her stage. It's open 24 hours, but after 11 p.m., the world forgets it exists. One light flickers overhead, casting tired shadows across half-broken machines. A soda can rattles in a corner. The vending machine groans like an old man remembering something he lost. And in the middle of all this ordinary decay, Isabel dances. Not for anyone, not for applause, but because her heart demands it. Her mother, Marisol, works the night shift here, sweeping floors and scrubbing lint filters for $9.50 an hour. She hums softly in Spanish as she moves, her song laced with exhaustion and love. Her eyes always find Isabel between turns just to make sure she's not too close to the heavy doors of the dryers. She never says, "Stop." She never says, "Not now." Instead, she watches, softly. The way some people watch flames in a fireplace, not for heat, but for peace. You see, Isabel doesn't go to ballet school. Can't afford it. Can't even afford YouTube Premium to skip the ads between the free tutorials she watches again and again. Every plie she's learned has been taught by a stranger online. Every arabesque is stitched together from trial and bruises. Her shoes are no longer pink. They're gray at the soles, frayed at the seams. But her form is precise. Head held like a secret, arms outstretched as if to cradle the moon. When she leaps, it is not high, but it is true. Tonight, she's practicing in front of dryer number 14. The reflection in the silver drum is warped, but it's the closest thing she has to a mirror. She holds her breath as she spins, pirouette after pirouette, counting in whispers, mouthing every beat. And then, stillness. Arms up, chin high. A moment so pure it might break you. It's the kind of stillness you only notice after years of being overlooked. The kind of stillness that says, "I'm here, I exist, I matter." Outside, cars rattle by on cracked roads. Inside, Isabel lowers her arms and exhales. She looks at the clock. 12:36 a.m. "Time for bed, mi cielo," Marisol calls gently. Isabel nods. She pads to the back, where a threadbare blanket waits on a makeshift cot beside the supply closet. She tucks herself in without complaint. She's used to sleeping here, used to being invisible, used to making magic in the margins. She has no idea that just above her, tucked into the yellowed corner of the ceiling, a tiny red dot blinks silently. A security camera. Watching, recording, witnessing. The world hasn't noticed her yet, but it will, and when it does, everything will spin. By the time Isabel walked into class, they were already laughing. Not loudly, just enough to slice. Enough to make your ribs fold inward and your ears burn red. Laughter like paper cuts, shallow, thin, and somehow still bleeding. She felt it before she heard it. A shift in the air. Heads tilted. A whisper passed like static from row to row, eyes darting up from phones, down to her shoes, back to screens. Click. Swipe. Stare. At first, she thought maybe it was her sweatshirt. Old, patched near the shoulder, stitched by Marisol's careful hands. Or maybe her hair. She hadn't braided it this morning. But no, this was different. This was pointed. And then she saw it. A boy named Logan leaned back in his chair, smug as oil on water, holding up his phone like a trophy. The screen played something on loop, choppy footage, grainy, blue-tinted under the laundromat's nightlights. Her dancing, spinning barefoot in front of dryer Soccer 14. "Ladies and gentlemen," Logan announced, mimicking a circus ringmaster, "presenting The spin cycle princess! The class erupted. It wasn't the kind of laughter that welcomes, it was the kind that isolates, surgically precise. One girl mimicked Isabel's arm movements in mocking slow motion. Another boy spun in his seat, clutching his chest like he was in a ballet of melodrama. Even the teacher looked down uncomfortably, unsure whether to step in or step away. Isabel stood still. Her backpack hung from one shoulder, her socks damp from morning dew. She didn't cry. Not yet. Not ever where they could see. The video had come from the Laundromat security camera. Someone had hacked or sweet-talked a copy. It wasn't just a clip. It was edited now, posted to TikTok with Logan's voice dubbed over, "Spin cycle go brrrr, laundry legend, broke ballerina." The hashtags weren't even clever, but they stung. By lunchtime, her name wasn't Isabel. It was Laundry Girl. Kids whispered it down the halls like a chant. It echoed in bathrooms. It scribbled itself across a locker in Sharpie. It followed her. She sat alone, untouched apple in front of her. Her fingers trembled. Her knees pressed together tight under the table. She bit her lip so hard it broke skin. Somewhere, her dance had been reduced to meme fodder. All those nights under humming fluorescent lights. All that care, all that honesty, turned into a joke. At home, or what passed for it, Isabel sat in silence on the mattress they called a bed. Marisol stirred pozole on the hot plate, her brow lined with worry. "Did something happen, mi amor?" Isabel shook her head. "You're not dancing tonight," Marisol said softly, sitting beside her. "No," Isabel whispered. Her voice was a cracked window. Marisol placed a gentle hand over hers. "Then I'll dance with you." But Isabel only looked away. Meanwhile, the video spread. What was meant as mockery began morphing into something else entirely. It reached the screen of a dance student in Texas, then a retired ballerina in then a K-pop choreographer in Seoul. They didn't see the joke. They saw the lines, the intention, the tension in Isabel's limbs that professional dancers spend years chasing. "Who is this kid?" One tweet read. "This movement? This isn't TikTok dance. This is something else," said another. Spin for Cycle Girl became a viral tag overnight. But Isabel had no idea. She didn't have a phone. She didn't have Wi-Fi. She didn't even know what was happening while the world redefined her. At school the next day, Logan strutted like a king. "She should thank me, honestly," he joked, throwing a grape in the air and catching it in his mouth. "No one knew who she was until me." "She still doesn't talk," someone replied. "She's mute like a mime," another laughed. But beneath the giggles, some kids began to shift in their seats, because the comment section under the video was changing, from mockery to awe, from hate to heat. "You don't get it," someone posted. "This is art. This is pain in motion." A week later, a feature article appeared on a dance blog, titled, "The Girl Who Danced Alone." The author didn't know her name, just that they had seen something real in the rhythm of her spin, something rare. Still, at school the laughter hadn't stopped. Isabel remained alone in the storm, unaware of the wind building behind her, because humiliation, like a dryer drum, turns fast and cruel. But sometimes it spins something else too, something unexpected, something raw and far away. In San Francisco, a woman named Solange Devereaux, director of the prestigious San Francisco Academy of Dance, clicked replay on the Laundromat video for the third time in an hour. She leaned forward, squinted at the screen, and whispered, "There she is." When the letter came, it wasn't gold embossed. It wasn't wrapped in ribbon or delivered with applause. It was folded, twice, tucked into a manila envelope hand-carried by a woman in all black. She stood at the laundromat door while Marisol scrubbed the edge of a dryer door with vinegar and prayer. Isabel, curled on the plastic chair near the soap dispensers, didn't even look up until she heard the woman speak. "Isabel Torres?" the woman said, her accent delicate, French, like sugar cracked on glass. "My name is Solange Devereaux. I saw your video." Marisol dropped her sponge. Isabel blinked. "I direct the San Francisco Academy of Dance," Solange continued, kneeling to eye level. "And I believe you belong with us." Belong, a word Isabel had never trusted. Belonging was for the kids with satin shoes and private lessons, not for girls who used dryer drums as mirrors and learned ballet from buffering screens in laundromats. She wanted to say no, wanted to crawl into herself like she always did when people stared too long. But Solange didn't stare. She waited, and Marisol's hand, gentle on Isabel's back, said only, "You don't have to be ready, just be brave." The academy smelled like cedar floors and clean sweat. Every hallway gleamed. Isabel's duffel looked like a bruised fruit among the pristine white lockers. She kept her eyes low, her posture pulled tight like thread on the edge of tearing. She was placed in level 4, an advanced class. And that's when the silence changed. It used to be protection. Now it was pressure. The girls there floated when they walked. Their limbs had confidence. Their names sounded expensive. Liana, Celeste, Vivienne. They wore matching warm-ups, spoke in half French, and stretched with the poise of cats. Isabel, in her thrifted sweater and socks turned inside out to hide the holes, didn't speak. "Is she auditioning for charity?" Liana whispered, loud enough to cut. "She's the viral one, right?" said Vivian, rolling her eyes. "That spin cycle girl, the laundromat ballerina." They laughed. Not like at school, but tighter, meaner. The kind of laughter that came from fear dressed as perfection. The first week nearly broke her. She couldn't follow the instructions. She stumbled through combinations, miscounted her turns, fell once, hard, on her knee. A purple bruise bloomed like ink under the skin. Solange didn't comfort her. She corrected her, sharply. But late one night, long after the others had left, Isabel stayed in Studio B staring at her reflection in the floor-length mirror. Her arms wouldn't obey. Her spine curled wrong. She wanted to scream. Instead, she moved. One pirouette, a leap, then she spun, not like them. Not like Liana, or Celeste, or the girls who thought elegance meant erasing who you were. She spun like the girl in the laundromat, barefoot, unapologetic. Solange stood in the doorway, unseen. She watched the entire thing. By week 4, Isabel was chosen for the summer showcase, a solo. It was unheard of, scandalous. A no-name girl with no training, no pedigree, taking center stage. The other dancers protested, some quietly, some not. "It's a PR stunt," one said. "She's just a trend," another sneered. "Let her go viral again and get it over with." And that's exactly what happened. The week before the performance, someone posted a slowed-down, re-edited version of Isabel's original laundromat video. Again. But this time they added clown music. Overlaid text that read, "Was this supposed to be dancing?" with a laughing emoji chain below. It exploded online. Again. TikTok stitched it with dance fails. Reddit memed it into oblivion. The original all got swallowed by a second wave of mockery, louder and more savage. And Logan? Logan reshared it with a caption. "Told y'all she peaked at dryer now 14. Isabel saw it during lunch in the academy's tiny kitchen. Another girl had left her phone on the table, the video auto-playing with cruel clarity. She barely made it to the bathroom before she threw up. That night she called Marisol. "I want to come home." There was a pause. The kind of pause where a mother measures heartbreak like rainfall. "Okay," Marisol said softly. "But first, tell me why you went in the first place." Isabel said nothing. "I'll tell you why," Marisol continued. "Because you love it. Because you are it. Because dancing is the only time your soul breathes without asking permission." She hesitated. "You don't dance to be seen, mi amor. You dance because you have something to say." There was a rustling sound. "Look in the envelope I gave you the day you left," she added. Isabel pulled it from her duffel. Inside, folded neatly, was a pencil drawing. Her mother's hand, clearly. It was Isabel, mid-spin, in the laundromat. In charcoal, raw and imperfect. Around her, scribbled in Spanish, were the words, "Even here, you were magnificent." And that night, alone in the empty studio, Isabel danced again, not to prove, not to please, not to go viral. She danced because silence had weight, because movement was the only thing that ever told the truth. Solange stood by the doorway again, arms folded. She didn't interrupt. She only whispered, as if to the floor itself, "Tomorrow, they will see." The theater smelled like velvet and nerves. Rows of polished mahogany seats curved inward like a breath held too long. Parents whispered, cameras clutched, dancers huddled backstage wrapped in silk and ritual. Every corner pulsed with tension, the kind that doesn't speak, only trembles. Isabel stood alone near the back curtain. Her number was pinned crooked on her chest. Her hair wasn't slick like the others. She wore no makeup. Her leotard was plain, her shoes second-hand, dyed pale gray. She looked like someone who wandered in by accident. Liana walked by in a cloud of perfume and lip gloss, laughing with Vivienne. "Hope she remembers it's a ballet, not a TikTok skit," Liana whispered, loud enough to slice. Isabel didn't flinch, not tonight. Tonight she wasn't the laundromat girl, or the viral joke, or the charity case with poor posture and a broken pirouette. Tonight she was silence waiting to roar. Solange approached her just minutes before curtain. She handed Isabel a small cloth bundle. Inside, a pair of satin point shoes, brand new. "Try them," Solange said, eyes warm. "They're not a gift, they're a mirror." Isabel looked up, confused. "They won't change who you are, but they'll reflect it." Isabel shook her head slowly. "I want to wear mine." She pulled out her old ones, soft at the toes, edges frayed, soles worn almost thin. The ones she danced in at the laundromat, the ones that had bled. Solange nodded. There was nothing more to say. Her name was called. Spotlight. Hush. Isabel walked on stage with no introduction, no fanfare, just the quiet creak of wood beneath her step. The theater was full, but it felt empty. The kind of empty that lets truth echo. She stepped to center stage. The music began. Low strings, haunting, unfamiliar, composed specifically for her solo by the Academy's maestro, who watched her video 17 times before writing a single note. Isabel raised her arms, and then she danced. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but honestly. Her movement didn't glide, it told. Each motion confessed something. The hunger of her nights, the trembling of her first fall, the silence of her pain. She folded and rose like the laundromat sheets she once sat on, curled around herself like the nights she pretended not to cry. She spun, once, twice, just like in Dreyer Norbert 14, the same axis. But this time the world was watching. She paused, halfway, breath held, one foot pointed like a question mark suspended in the dark. And in that stillness, in that moment that stretched like a held breath across the theater, something broke open. Not in her, it was in them. A single gasp from the front row. A mother pulled her child close. Someone whispered, "My God." The music swelled and Isabel moved again. Faster now, fire blooming beneath every step. Her arms swept wide, not to please but to reach. Her feet struck the floor like memory, like prayer. It wasn't the kind of dance you copy, it was the kind you carry. When the final note trembled into silence, Isabel didn't bow. She simply stood, chest rising, face tilted toward the light, and the crowd didn't clap, not right away. They stared, because sometimes applause feels too small. And then, a single pair of hands, somewhere near the back. Clap, clap, then another, then... All at once, a wave of sound rose through the theater like a tsunami, crashing forward, rising from their seats, people clapping with their whole bodies, shouting words Isabel couldn't hear because her ears were full of heartbeat. Solange watched from the wings, hand pressed to her chest. She had seen hundreds of dancers, none like this. Backstage, Vivienne said nothing. Liana looked at the floor. No one met Isabel's eyes. They didn't have to. The silence had changed shape. Online, the Academy's live stream surged. The comment section flooded. That wasn't ballet, that was resurrection. This girl spun pain into poetry. She just danced a whole generation of kids like me back to life. By morning, clips of her performance trended globally. The original Laundromat video resurfaced, but this time, reshared with reverence. No one's laughing now. Someone I tweeted. Turns out the girl they mocked was a storm in waiting. Even Logan posted a video. He didn't speak. He just showed the headline. Laundromat girl leaves critics speechless, and nodded just once. And Isabel? She slept that night with her shoes beside her pillow, curled like they belonged there, not because she needed proof, but because for the first time, she felt the truth of what Marisol had said. She didn't dance to be seen. She danced to remember that even silence has a voice, and sometimes it speaks loudest when the world finally stops laughing. The laundromat looked smaller now, or maybe Isabel had grown. She stood in the same place where she used to rehearse arabesques between cycles, her hands once trembling as they stretched across the mop handle she used as a bar. Now, the mop was gone. So was the broken vending machine, and the sign above the dryers, new. Painted in soft, swirling script by a local artist, the Spin Studio, home of Isabel Torres. People didn't just come to wash their clothes anymore. They came with kids, in tow, with phones in hand, with hope in their eyes. They came because something had bloomed here that the city couldn't explain. A miracle that smelled faintly of lavender softener and steel. Solange visited twice in that first month. Quietly, without press. She brought other dancers too, ones who'd never seen a laundromat, never touched a dryer, never danced outside a mirrored room. They watched Isabel lead a class barefoot on the tiles, music playing softly from a Bluetooth speaker. Duct taped to the wall, they saw how the light hit her cheek, how the kids followed her, copying each step as if it were sacred. And they didn't ask questions. They just listened. The school district offered her a full scholarship to a private performing arts academy. She said yes, but only if they let. Her return to her public school twice a week to mentor younger students. She wanted them to see what she hadn't. That dance didn't need chandeliers or velvet seats. It needed truth and room to leap. The city mayor came to one of her sessions. So did a producer from a major dance docu-series. There were talks of a film, a book. Endorsements. Marisol turned down most of them. We're not selling a story, she said, we're sharing it. Isabel never stopped dancing in the laundromat. Even when the academy built her a home studio. Even when they offered her flights to New York, Paris, Tokyo. She still came back here, to aisle 3, between the detergent shelf and dryer in the Rover 14, because here was where the silence spoke, where the pain lived, where she first understood that sometimes the world doesn't hand you a stage, you carve it from concrete. Logan never apologized directly. One afternoon, he left a bouquet outside the studio door, wildflowers messy, untied, with a note that read, I was noise. You were music. I get it now. Isabel didn't respond, not with words, but a week later, she handed out sketchbooks to every kid in her beginner class. On the first page of each was a printed copy of her mother's drawing, the one from the envelope, her mid-spin between machines, with a caption in Spanish. Even here, you were magnificent. In late fall, Isabel performed on a national stage for the first time. The Kennedy Center. Red curtains, glittering lights, a live orchestra. She wore no sequins, no crown, just her laundromat shoes. When she stepped onto that pristine stage, the cameras caught her hands trembling for the first time in years. But when the music started, she moved as she always had, like silence being broken, like history retold in motion, like a girl who learned to leap before she ever learned to be loud. And at the end, when the final chord faded into velvet hush, no one stood right away, because standing felt small. They wept instead. Back in Fresno, the laundromat stayed, 24 hours, and every night if you pass by, you might still catch a glimpse through the window. A girl spinning between dryers, her silhouette curved in gold under humming lights. You won't hear applause. You won't hear music. Just silence, deep hole, and somehow louder than ever. If this story moved you, even just a little, please consider sharing it. Somewhere out there, a quiet soul might need to hear that their silence is powerful, their struggle is art, and their story matters. And if you'd like to see more stories like this, slow, honest, and full of heart, subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started.